Hi, welcome to Board Game Express. Today we're going to rules blitz Great Western Trail. Now, please be aware, Great Western Trail, big game with a lot of rules. So if you're not familiar with the rules, you're probably going to want to watch the full teach video. However, if you either just are interested in figuring out what to do, or if you just kind of need a refresher to get you started, then that's what we're here for. All right, now after you have set up the board, players will take turns in clockwise order doing these three pieces on their board, A, B, C, or what is going to be a move, an action, and then card draw. So M, A, C. Now, the first thing you do on your turn is you move your cowboy. Now, when you move, you have to follow the arrows. You can only go forward. And occasionally, you're going to have a split available, and you can choose which way to go. But once you go there, you're going to have to continue along the path. Your move limit is listed here. It's going to be based on the player count. So, for example, in a three-player game, it's going to be 3. You can move 1 to 3 spaces forward. You and your opponent's cowboys do not interfere with each other, so you can both be in the same space, whatever, doesn't matter. And when you land somewhere, if you land on your own previously built building, or you land on one of these gray neutral buildings that start the game, you get to do all of the actions printed on the card. So as an example, if I were to land on this building, that giant vertical divider in the middle says I can do the thing on the left and I can do the thing on the right. I can do either, and I can do them in either order. So the left symbol is discard a black 2 cow, get 2 money, and that giant cow head symbol is purchase a cow from the market. Now, if you land on an opponent's building, because during the game people have started building things up and your free movement doesn't quite get you clear, then you are not allowed to use an opponent's building. Also, these hazards, if you choose to move there and land on them, there is no action to do on them. Then what you're going to have to do is what's known as an auxiliary action. The auxiliary actions are printed on the left side of your board. There are 5 different ones. And in order to access these, you have to have the discs cleared. You do start the game with 2 of them cleared. So if you land somewhere that doesn't have a real action, then you get to choose 1 row and you get to do it 1 time. So the top row would be collect 1 money. The second row would be draw a card into your hand and discard a card afterwards. So a little bit of card cycling there. All right. The last thing that you can land on, besides these buildings on the board, is as you eventually move down the path, you're going to land in Kansas City. So in Kansas City, you're going to do these 5 numbered things in order. So 1, 2, and 3 is choose one of the 2 tiles visible and put it out on the board in the appropriate place. So this is a water hazard. I'll choose that one. You put it in the next available water space. You know what? Let's throw a cowboy. It goes in the next available employee spot. So it goes here. That would force the token to move down a spot. And then finally, you know what? I'm going to throw a craftsman out as well. So in a 3-player game, you will not use that final column over there. So after you put these 3 things out, go ahead and refresh from the appropriate stack, 1, 2, and 3. And then score your hand and your cows. So you start this game with a hand limit of 4 cards. So let's say, as an example, this is my hand. I will count all the cards in my hand except for if you have a duplicate, you do not get to double count it. So in this example, I have a pair of gray 1s. They're both jerseys. They're the same card. So you would ignore the second one. And in this example, I would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 value. So that's the breeding value. If you have earned any what are called certificates previously, so you start the game with 0, but if you have 1 or 2 or more, you can now choose to spend any of these that you want, move down the track, and that'll add to your breeding value. So you can boost it to, I can spend 1 and boost it to 6, for example. Now, whatever value you choose to score, immediately collect that much money. So let's say I scored 5. Ta-da! Discard your entire hand. And then finally, action 5 here is put a new disc out onto the city track up to the value of the hand that you just scored. So I just scored a value of 5, for example. I can place a disc up to and including spot number 4 here in Wichita. Now, you are not allowed to double up anywhere you have previously gone. So let's say I already had one in Topeka. I cannot choose to put another one there. I can put one in Wichita, or I can put one in Kansas City. Now, you can't double up except for Kansas City, the 0 space, and San Francisco here, the 18 space. You are allowed to put more than one token in each. And by the way, you and the other players, again, you do not interfere with each other there. So each of you is allowed to place in Wichita, for example. Now, when you place a disc, the thing that you have to do is you have to choose one that has a matching background. So this white background to this disc says that I have to take one of the white background upgrades here. So for example, I can choose this guy, drop it in Wichita. If you were to make it high enough, so for example, Albuquerque and El Paso, you can see a little black edge to it. That means I would be allowed to choose one of these 5 black-backed discs instead. So I could choose that one. That increases my walking speed. Now, if you have a train that is not caught up to the same location of the disc that you just placed, so if I just placed in Wichita, you have to pay $1 for every one of these little red X symbols that you have to travel past. So if I had never moved my train, in order to reach Wichita, I got to pay $1 in order to drop that token there. And when you drop these tokens, there's these green arrows connecting that basically tells you that whenever you've put a disc on each side of that arrow, then you will collect whatever bonus is inside. So in this case, it is -3 points at the end of the game, and collect 1 objective card from the set. And okay, once you are done scoring up, go ahead and put your guy back into the bottom right corner where you will start your journey over again. And at the end, if you have, for any reason, gotten rid of any cards from your hand, so for example, Kansas City, you have gotten rid of your whole hand, you will draw back up to your hand limit. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Next player gets the go. Now, those are the basics. And while I would love to explain each and every single action in the game, that isn't really going to be practical in a summary. So what you're going to want to do as you play this game is you're going to want to access the rules booklet to simply say, okay, if I land on this building and that is the iconography on it, what is it that I get to do? And that will be by far the easiest way to play as you're learning it. Now, I will, however, spend a little time talking about the 3 primary things and what it is that they do for you. So those 3 things are important. And it all has to do with this first space over here. So this is the space that allows you to purchase new employees from this region over here. So in particular, what the symbol is discard a white 2-valued cow from your hand for $2 if you want to. You may then buy an employee for that -0 means base cost. So the cost of an employee is the number printed on the row that it sits on. So -6 for the first 2 rows. Then if you wanted to, you could buy a second employee, but the little -2 means that this time around you got to pay $2 additional. All right. So why are we talking about employees? Because, well, the employees, that is what's going to allow you to do the bulk of the important things in the game. So there are 3 employees. The first is the cowboys, the craftsmen, and the purple guys down here are the engineers. And they correspond to getting more cattle, to building buildings, so these things, and then finally moving your train, which is what the engineer will do. Now, a couple things about buying employees. You are limited to having 5 additional on top of the 1 pre-printed one that you all start the game with. So even though it's not an actual tile, you do have 1 cowboy, 1 craftsman, and 1 engineer to start the game. Whenever you buy one and you cover up an icon, then you get to immediately score that bonus. If you're not able to, you cannot store it. If you can't take it at the moment you score it, I'm afraid you lose the benefit. So just as you were picking up employees, kind of try to plan that out a little bit. Now, cowboys. Let's talk about those first. Cowboys boost your ability to purchase cows. So this is the cow purchase icon on the bottom right. Looks like the little steer head. And when you go to that space, you get to access the cow deck. Actually, let me put these in order just to make it a little more visible. So let's say this is the deck of available cows for purchase. When you go to the cow purchase action, you look at the number of cowboys you have. So let's say I have 3. And then there's a little spending chart along the bottom here. So you can spend those 3 cowboys either individually or collectively to make any of these purchases, up to 3 cowboy purchases. So for example, 3 cowboys can be used all at once to buy a 4 valued cow, one of these guys, for 6 money. So if I wanted to use them all, kind of use them temporarily, you don't throw them away or anything, and I'd be able to add this to my hand for $6. Add it to the discard pile, and over time it's going to draw back into my draw pile. Or I could, for example, say I had a lot of money, I could spend 2 of my cowboys to buy a 3 valued cow for $3, and then I could spend my last remaining cowboy to buy a 4 for a full price of $12. That would be another option. Finally, there is one option in case you're sort of really desperate and in the event the cow deck gets a little thin, you can spend 1 cowboy to draw 2 new cows from the deck for purchase. So if you don't quite see what you want, you can always try your luck there. All right, so that is what the cowboys are for. Now the second is the craftsmen, and these guys are associated with the building action. So the building action is over here on the bottom right. And what that basically says is you get to build, and for every 1 level of building that you want to build, you pay $2. So if you build a level 1, $2. If you build a level 3, $6. Now, when you're building, you are restricted to the number of craftsmen you actually currently have. So if I only had 1 craftsman, I would only be allowed to build one of these 3 level 1 buildings. If you want to build a level 1 building, pay $2 and then go ahead and put it anywhere on the board. There's a little bit of strategic consideration here because as you put these things out, you are going to be walking on them in order to trigger the effect. Presumably you want to put out a building you are actually interested in using a lot, and they make things slightly more inconvenient for your opponents because it lengthens the playing field. Each time you move forward, you skip these empty spots, but you do have to count all the buildings that have been built, whether they're neutral, their own, and opponents. So it actually sort of makes it a little bit of more of a slog to get through the entire board. Finally, there are these little green and black hand symbols, and that is a tax on all opponents. So if I build this thing out, that green hand means anytime an opponent steps past it, they have to pay me $2. The money they pay is printed on the player action tile right here. Now, the payment is mandatory. However, it is only required so long as the player at that time has the money. So if if I build this out and Mr. Blue goes past and only has $1, they would only pay me $1. The other is ignored. And if they had no money, I would not collect anything at all. Now, when you build, in addition to building, you're also allowed to upgrade. So let's say I had 3 craftsmen. If I wanted to, I can build a new building level 3 or level 1 or 2. You cannot split up. I could not build a level 2 building and a level 1 building separately, for example. It's just one build action. So I can build a level 3, or if I had previously built a level 2 somewhere, I am allowed to destroy that and upgrade it to a level 5. And in this case, in going from a 2 to 5, I'm increasing it by 3 levels, so that is my 3 craftsman actions. It's boosting from 2 to 5. I would owe $6. The old building goes away, it's now gone, and the new one gets dropped down in its place. All right, so that is how you build. And finally, the engineering action. The engineering action is associated with this symbol on the bottom right of this tile. And actually, this symbol you will see a couple of times. This is move according to the number of engineers you have up along the train track, which is over here. Now, when you move, so for every engineer, so let's say I had 2, I would be able to move up 2 spaces. Now, as you move up, and by the way, it is possible to move down as well. There are a few effects that move down. You will hop over any opponent that you come across. So in this case, if I were to move up 2 spots, I'd go 1, 2. You simply jump the person there. And if there are 2 people there, you basically jump again. So if I move up 2, I would go 1 and then 2. I get to hop over both of them. If you want to, you have a choice whenever you reach one of these little branches over here of going into the station. And by the way, you can choose to go into the station either while you're going forwards or backwards. However, only one person at a time. If another player is hogging that space, I'm afraid I cannot go in there. I either have to wait for him to leave or I just have to forget about it. When you go into the station, you get to do a disc upgrade. So again, pay attention to the background color. This is a white, so I can only do a basic white upgrade. I can say, hey, I would like to drop a station token in there. You have to pay the money printed, so -2 for this first one here. And at the end of the game, you're going to score 1 point for having one there. And if this, what's called Station Master tile is still there, you can choose to take it, but this costs 1 of your employees. So if you say, hey, John, why don't you stick around? You're now in charge of the station. You're the station master. Collect the tile, get the reward, whatever is printed on top immediately, and then save it for the bottom for the end of the game. So this one says for every employee that you have at the end, get 1 point. And by the way, that does include your 3 initial ones. So collect that over there. And if you reach the end, you will be allowed to move backwards. The stations here in the far areas are worth quite a lot of victory points. And there are a little bit of complexity here. So again, if you manage to reach this, which is not easy, then easiest just to kind of check the book to see exactly how that is rigged. All right, now that is the basic cycle of your turns. You move, you do an action, and then you refill your cow hand back up to your limit. As you cycle through the game, players will hit Kansas City over and over again and score, and in scoring, they will keep putting out more hazards, TPs, and employees. And as employees get put out, 1, 2, 3, each time you fill a row, you're going to bump the endgame marker down. As you bump it down past this little cow symbol here, that means go ahead and immediately look at the available cow deck. And so in a 3-player game, there's supposed to be 10. Go ahead and refill the available deck up to that number. So if people had bought some of these out and you only had 6 left, go ahead and draw 4 more into the deck. There are going to be 2 of these, so there's one here, and then if you pass the one down here, you will do it again. And then eventually, finally, you're going to move this tile off the board. And when you put an employee here, there are no more employees. And whoever actually triggered that collects this chip, which will be worth 2 points at the end of the game. Now, whoever put that chip over, this is now that person's final turn. They will not get another turn, but this is their compensation. Every other player on the board will get 1 final turn, whatever it is that they want to do. And that marks the end of the game. And when the game is over, if you can memorize this, kudos. But quite honestly, it's probably easier just to use the included scoring pad. It very conveniently will tell you what scores at the end of the game, from excess money, 5-1, to station tokens, to station master tiles, to the cows in your hand, to objective cards that you may score, all of that. And once you've scored everything, that will be the end of the game. Now, I know I did not tell you everything that's in the game. Unfortunately, that requires a lot, but that is the general arc of Great Western Trail, and now you know how it plays.